Today we're going to create a compost tea for your garden plants to drink. Hi, my name's Jeremy, and today we're continuing in our Gardening with Carl series as Carl shares with us how you can take some perhaps common ingredients that you may already have in your garden shed, add them to a bucket of water, add some air, and within 24 hours you have a compost tea that your plants are sure to love. Let's listen to Carl now as he shares with us from his front porch.
Hi everybody, I'm so happy to welcome you today to my front porch. Today I'm going to be talking with you a little bit about something that's really one of my favorite subjects when it comes to gardening. I'm sure all of you have heard of compost, and when we talk about advanced gardening, and especially organic gardening, it all revolves around this idea of compost. What is compost? And of course everybody thinks that they know what compost is, but there's good compost and there's bad compost and there's really, really outstanding compost, I understand. Now, any compost is better than nothing, and so all of your attempts to learn how to make compost and to do it and to practice it, you're going to find will be an advantage and be a real blessing to your soil. Because compost is where the very vital microbes that make soil rich, enriching for the things to grow, that make things grow, compost is an ideal environment. It's like something that just really comforts them and helps them and assists them in not just growing but multiplying. I mean, just exploding in growth exponentially. And so one of the things we do with compost, and it's probably didn't originate years ago, but more recently someone figured out, and I could tell you who it was a lady named Elaine Ingham. Elaine Ingham was a soil biologist, had her doctor's degree in biology, and her specialty is the soil, and she has taken it to the nth degree. And she's an expert on both compost and compost tea. She spends her entire life going to Australia and all over the world, teaching people how to revitalize their soil by using compost and compost tea. And so many of the ideas that we have now to make rich compost tea come from her research. I want to just explain to you a little bit of how the soil benefits our plants. The soil, you see, has all kinds of various microbes and micro-sized life in it. There's a whole biome beneath the soil. You have fungi and bacteria that dwell immediately under the surface. And then when you go a little deeper, there's protozoa and there are nematodes, and of course all through the structure of the soil you have earthworms and you have many other things. But you see, this whole colony of growth that's going on under the soil is the very thing that gives the soil its vitality, and it makes it beneficial for growth. When you go out into the woods, you will find that there's a natural thing transpiring. The leaves fall, they begin to decompose, and underneath the leaves you will find these microbes growing. And so what they've discovered is that if you can put together the decomposing of organic matter like leaves and grass and anything that's been growing, even cardboard, you can put that into a compost pile, and as it decomposes, what actually causes it to decompose are all of these microbes that just explode in growth in that compost pile. Now, I want to explain to you a little bit of this idea of compost tea. It's a very simple thing, and anybody can do it. Most people find that a 5-gallon bucket, just a plain bucket that you can get at Lowe's, or you can get anywhere, most any place, you can use a 5-gallon bucket. And then you will need a device that's called an aerator. Where's my aerator? Anyway, you have an aerator like in a fish aquarium. But you want to get a good size aerator, one that can really pump out the oxygen and the air. Because in this aeration environment, when you introduce various things like the microbes in here, and the way we do that, by the way, is earthworm castings. We collect earthworm castings. Now you can buy earthworm castings. You can get them actually at Lowe's. I got this at Lowe's. I ordered this on the internet, and this is vermiculture. Vermi meaning worms and the outcasts that they deposit, and it's the richest substance that you possibly can find on the earth for the nurture of the soil. And so we introduced that. We put a couple of cupfuls of that into this water, and you do it in something like a woman's stocking, or you can find these paint strainers at Lowe's or Aces, and you can take this and you can dip it into your water. And there's several things that you need to keep in mind. This water, for instance, is going to reproduce these microbes, and you want the temperature to be ideal, which would be between 70 and 80 degrees. You don't want it too much below that. When you get below 60 degrees, they don't like it, and they don't seem to multiply as much. But you put this in here, and you have this vermiculture that's just loaded with microbes, and they go in there, and then you create something that oxygenates this water and just makes them explode in growth. They multiply, and they actually do it in 24 hours. It's ideal that you take this water immediately after about 24 to 30 hours and take it and spray it on your plants. You take it out, you can spray it on your plants, or you can do a soil soak. You can just pour it at the base of your tomato plant, and you'll almost see your tomato plant smile. It's an incredible boost to the growth of your plants. And people who really understand organic gardening find that this is one of the best things going, because you can take a compost pile that may take several months to ripen, and instantly, once it has ripened, you can actually take out of there and multiply these microbes that benefit the soil many, many times within 24 hours, and you can take it out and spray it on your plants. The underleaf of the plants have mouths that are called stoma. Those of you that took biology, you know what that is. And you know, it's very fascinating. There was a man, for instance, in Minnesota who was working on his doctor's degree at the University of Minnesota. He happened to be a very devout Christian, and he believed in creation. He believed in a God that gave to us all of this lovely biology that we have, and especially in his garden. He was a great gardener. But as he was working on his doctor's degree in biology, he was fascinated by a number of things. He loved birds. He was a bird watcher. He loved to take walks out into the woods. And one of the things that he noticed was that in the evening and in the early morning, when is the best time to observe birds, he noticed that there was dew on everything. Everything was wet. And he was a curious man. He was a very intelligent man, but very curious and academic. And so he decided to begin to test some things. He wanted to find out, for instance, it was at those two times of day that birds seemed to sing the most. In the morning, you would have the mourning doves singing, you would have the robins singing, you have all this great explosion of the symphony of the out of doors. All of nature seemed to come alive. Not just birds, but you had cicadas, and you had grasshoppers, and you had bugs. You had this whole symphony of nature. And he was curious about this. And so he noticed that the plants had dew on them, and he also knew the structure, biological structure, of the plants, that leaves on their underside have what is called the stomata. The stomata are actually openings that drink in that dew, that water. And he began to think about this, you know, he began to think about the fact that it seemed like when all of these birds were singing and all of nature was exploding in sound, that this stomata would be open and it would be drinking that nurturing dew, that water. And you know what he did? He took some compost tea and he went out in the morning and he sprayed that on the underleaf of the plant, and he noticed how these plants were so nurtured by that. And then he tried doing it in the midday. He tried doing it at other times. He would spray, but the mouth wasn't open. And so he rationalized that there are 2 times in the day when plants seem to benefit from the nurture that nature supplies. Now, this matter of the sound of nature was another thing that really perplexed him. And you know what he did? In the middle of the day, he took his plants and he kind of moistened them, and then he played music. He played the recordings of birds singing and nature chirping and buzzing, and do you know what happened? He noticed through his ocular device that stomata opened up. When those sounds began to sound, when the birds were singing and the recording, and when the music was playing, he even noticed it when he played Mozart. And when he played some of the music, some of the very organized music, he noticed that these stomata opened up. And so he would take, even at, you know, days that or time of the day when normally it didn't, that it didn't open up, he would play that, and then he would spray it with his compost tea, and his plants just grew like crazy. He loved to grow apple trees, and he said that the production of apples just so increased in quality and in production, and it was just an amazing experience for him. Well, he made a business out of this, and he called it Sonic Bloom. Sonic Bloom. You can actually find it, I think, on the internet. And he sells records. He sells a little device that will produce a chirping sound, and he claims that if you play that in your garden, it will open up the stomata of your plants, and you can go out there and spray your plants at any time you want to if you use this device. Now, I just thought that was so fascinating, and I thought it was just a real support for the idea of how plants grow and how they're fed, and how God has arranged all of these amazing things in nature that convince us that there's such order in creation. And today I wanted to show you how you can make one of these. Now, yesterday I thought, you know, I have all of this equipment already, but I just want to be able to tell my friends that this is something I made yesterday. I took a little time out of the day to make it, just to prove to you that it can be done, because I'm not a very skillful person when it comes to putting things together. But I just want to show you my little attempt. I'm going to, if I can, yeah, here we go. Look at that. See that? Now, I took this PVC and I cut it in specific places, and I made this little thing that would fit down in the bottom of this bucket. And then I took a drill and I drilled holes all the way around this, so that when I put this down at the bottom, and I have it so that it'll just fit right over there, and then I connect it to my aerator, I turn that on and it just bubbles and it's filled with oxygenation, and then I begin to add things that are going to make this work. I introduce, first of all, the microbes, and I do that by either putting in compost fresh compost right out of the compost pile, or the very finest thing is vermiculture or worm castings. And then I add a few things to feed those microbes. One of my very favorite additions or additives is Azomite. I've talked to you about Azomite before, and Azomite is a wonderful mineral thing that you can add to your soil. And it has over 60 minerals, and it's being found more and more to be an extremely good additive to most everything you're doing in the garden. And I put 2 tablespoons of this in this mixture, 2 of them, and then I put some other things. For instance, molasses. You know why we put molasses? Because these microbes are sugar freaks. They love something sweet, and molasses is healthy for them. And you have to make sure that it's not sulfurated molasses. It's unsulfured. And this here is some molasses, and I always put at least a tablespoon of molasses in a 5-gallon container. And then I like to put something from the sea. There's so much good that comes out of the sea, and kelp is one of the most nurturing things for plants because it has so many things that feed the biome underneath the soil that I was talking to you about a while ago. And so I like to put Kelp Meal. I won't open this now, but I like to put about 2 tablespoons of this Kelp Meal in there because that too feeds these microbes. They love this. And I will also add a couple of other things. For instance, fish fertilizer. You may not want to put this in, but they like this. They like to eat this. And then anything from the sea. This is some kelp liquid. This was Kelp Meal. Sometimes I put alfalfa pellets, just a little tiny bit in there, and that adds something that makes it richer. Now, it's very important that you not take this beyond 30 hours. Ideally, it's 24 hours. You see, if you take it beyond 30 hours, what happens is they eat all of that food up, and you could even keep adding food, but what will happen is you will begin to get an anaerobic, that is what is it? It's the opposite of what you're really wanting. They will begin to die. And you don't want that. What you want is when they're at their optimum production, where you have millions of these little microbes ready to benefit your soil. And you can take it out and you can dilute it. It's best to dilute it anywhere up to 5-to-1. In other words, 5 water, 1 of this. Or most people do it about 2-to-1. They like it a little richer. It's up to you. But let me just tell you, I wrote down some of the benefits of this. Increased nuclear cycling. Microbes make perfect plant food. That is how soil works. Think of microbes like tiny fertilizer factories. Nutrient cycling is what helps make the nutrients and minerals in the soil into a form that is available for plants to uptake. When you apply organic fertilizer, you're not directly feeding the plant, but you're feeding the microbes. Did you know that? Most people think they're feeding a plant when they feed it fertilizer. It's not the plant, it's the microbes. You see, the microbes are what makes the soil rich. And do you realize that when they want to check to see how rich a soil is, a lot of times they'll count the number of earthworms in a cubic foot of soil. You get a healthy soil structure. In other words, the soil becomes more friable, more workable. It's not like hard clay that sets up like a stone. And do you know that if you do this often in your garden, you will have to use less water because it makes your soil more moist and allows it to maintain the moisture longer. you will have to use less compost, and you will use less fertilizer, and you will also benefit by much higher yields. So I hope that you will try this, and I think you will find that it will really benefit your garden. Compost tea, a wonderful idea.
Well, there you have it, your very own recipe for how to make compost tea at home, something your plants are sure to love. Now, something Carl shared with me that's very important is that when you make this compost tea, do not use chlorinated water. You can use tap water, but just make sure that you leave that water in the bucket for 2 hours at least with the aerator on, and that will remove the chlorine for you. Now, if you'd like more information on some of the ingredients he mentioned, you can check out the description below where I've put links to those items. And also, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already, and hey, give us a thumbs up and hit that bell if you'd like to be notified when our videos are released. So please, join us next time as together we explore greener pastures.